Many of you might know Mr. Hiett. He's the Executive Director of Operational Planning COG. He's our resident AI expert. He's graciously want to lead us through this meeting session today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Robert.
All right, thank you. I know we kind of have a crowded room today, so wherever I stand, I'm probably going to be in the way. So if it's all right, I'm just going to stay seated because everybody can at least see the slides with me doing that. Again, AI came out what in the end of 2022 or so, or at least mainstream with ChatGPT. And a lot of people kind of look at it as it's just another tool, kind of like any other tool that we get exposed to on a daily basis. And I'd say it took a good two or 3 months for it to settle out there. And really, since that time, it just has exploded all over the place. And then you've had other versions come out, like Claude AI, Perplexity. There's all kinds of clone copies of these main three chatbots out there now, and it's kind of like reminds me of the Wild West shows in the late 1800s. The old movies with the snake oil salesman coming around with the wagon, and you do have to be careful about that. Now, what I'll say is I don't have time to get into all the different silos and side issues on generative AI and ChatGPT today. I'm trying to keep it mostly focused, but I do have a little bit of a walkthrough. We'll cover some of the things I think you saw in the survey, and maybe if there's enough interest that we can have a webinar or something later to include some other organizations that are using it as well. Me personally, I've got 7 specializations in generative AI and ChatGPT use, and I've got well over 300 hours trained on it, and I use it on a daily basis. Okay, so just quickly looking at our agenda for the session here, we're going to do a quick intro to generative AI, talk a little bit about its limitations and capabilities, hit the ethical use. I've only got time to do a few prompt structure examples, and then we're going to have some live example demonstrations here at the tables if folks have equipment to do so. If not, hey, we'll improvise. So yeah, we'll do the live demo, we'll do some breakouts, and then we'll close it up with any Q&A that we have. And just depending on time, if we have time to do a few more things, we'll see what we can do. All right, generative AI, really quick. Kind of what is this? You hear AI, you hear ChatGPT, you hear some of the different terms, but literally, generative AI is not something that's just spitting out random information. It's really designed to think and talk back to you in a human type fashion. It understands English or whatever language you're talking, and then it's able to interpret that and then come back and generate new feedback. When we're looking at the different models out there, there are models that they are just there to try to predict what you're gonna say next, or they're going to look at the type of information that you've submitted, and then it's kind of do a little bit of a relationship analysis there, and then come back and give you a reply that it thinks you're looking for. And so, so generative AI is like it's just a big topic area right now, and just think of it as there's different levels of intelligence behind this. And so ChatGPT, Claude, and Perplexity, at least with the paid models, are essentially the cream of the crop. And there's a lot of tools that people are going to try to sell you that are really repackaged ChatGPT, Claude, or Perplexity. They're just going to put their little front view on it and then sell it to you on the back end. All right, so how it all works is It's powered by machine learning and neural networks, trained on large data sets. And again, as I mentioned, it uses patterns and structures to try to generate responses. And so when we talk about machine learning and neural networks, that's I think I got a slide on that, but I'm not going to get too deep there. But the data sets are important because what's been driving the train behind AI is, if you look on LinkedIn, if you've ever liked one ChatGPT or AI article, your feed's probably getting flooded with influencers and other articles. And I do have to say the private sector has very rapidly adopted AI at an enterprise scale. And in the public sector, only 2% of public sector organizations worldwide have implemented any form of AI. Most of the public sector's organizations, just maybe shy of 70%, are exploring AI and how it might be able to be used in their organizations. And so, depending on time, I can discuss a couple of examples. But the data sets are important because in councils of governments, we live with data. Our planning tools are based on it. Our modeling tools are based on it. And so, in the generative AI world, they're consuming all of the data that they can. And by 2026, the big companies will have absorbed every shred of publicly available information on the entire internet. And then after that, they're going after proprietary information. So, these models they're going to get smarter, but as far as their comprehensive knowledge, I mean, they got less than 2 years before they run out of information. And there's good and there's bad behind that. But what I'll say is I know we've talked with EDA and they've looked at us and they've looked at another organization, and you've got some folks that are looking at trying to come up with some better planning tools. And so I know right now they're looking at data sets. They're looking at these things called large language models, which I'll go into the next slide. And they're trying to figure out how to customize data to then fit in planning tools that we use on a daily basis. So our federal and state agencies are they're already planning for how to set up AI and then run it back through services or tools that we're using. All right, so when we look at the AI hierarchy here, you've got artificial intelligence, and that's just a broad category. It can do lots of different things, and there's lots of different ways to classify that. Technically, you could say it's the robot arm at the auto factory that's punching the bolts in a car frame or something. But there's different flavors of it. And then you get into this machine learning, deep learning, generative AI, and all that really boils down to is that's a massive process involving a lot of computers that are trying to classify data um, um, in a logical, orderly way so it understands what things are. And there's a process by which they have, I've got a picture of this projector and it's labeled projector, and then it's running computer models through that, looking at all the different kinds of projectors that are labeled, and then they might just be pulling images. And I'm just using an example here, but just pulling random images off the internet of projectors that aren't labeled, and then the computers are trying to figure out what kind of projector that is, and then properly name it and classify it. And so, I mean, we all deal with data to some extent, so you kind of get the point. Uh, so they run through these processes, and then where it really begins to intersect with the ChatGPT and the Claude and Perplexity is these large language models. And so you'll hear a lot about large language models and LLMs. And so ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, other tools that we may see, they're going to be running off large language models that are trained to fit inside of generative AI. And so when we're using those tools, we're right now we're using large language models that are just trained on a bunch of stuff. And out of that bunch of stuff, they might know what a council of governments is. It knows what planning is. Uh, at a broad level, it's going to know who we are, what we do, the kinds of things that we work with, and it can spit out kind of what y'all were voting on earlier, generic stuff, right? But what it doesn't have is it doesn't have our knowledge. It doesn't have our insight. It's not going to think the way that we do. And so what we have is we have the ability to interact with it and customize that information, and then take what it gives us and makes it better. And so anybody who thinks AI in the foreseeable future is going to replace humans, do work to, so it's going to do all your work for you is sadly mistaken. You always have to keep a human in the loop. There has to be, somebody that knows that subject area looking at the information that's getting produced. If I'm asking ChatGPT to come up with an analysis for rocket science, and then it spits out a report, I'm not going to pull the janitor and say, "Hey, man, check this, see if this is right." You're going to want to make sure you've got somebody that's got a little bit of background in rocket science reading this report to one, make sure it sounds okay, that it's structured well, and looks like a human wrote it, which actually a human should, because a human should be editing it before it ever hits release. But right now, we're faced every day with examples where somebody just asks the chatbot something, it spits out a reply, and then there's your press release, there's your policy, there's whatever, and then later they go, "Oh no!" So there's a well, I'll save it for later. But anyway, generative AI can take text, images, and then this thing over here called multimodal processing. And all that is that it's able to take the data and run a bunch of parallel functions and analysis and activities to uh, process the information that you've given it and get a speedy reply. If you tried to do this on some of this stuff on your, my laptop here, it could do it. Yeah, I might get my social security check before it does, but it would eventually get it done. And so, like I said, there's a lot of computing power that really powers these things on the back end. So you need to rely on the large commercial providers, because this stuff and the power it consumes and the data it needs is way beyond budgets that any of us have. All right, examples. We looked at it at the survey. You've got text generation. These chatbots can write you articles, stories, reports, so on and so forth. They're really good at summarizing data. Conversational AI. This is the chatbots. And so, chatbot is a term that's kind of thrown around, and it's used so much that you kind of like, what is this? Is this the chatbot that I go to my car dealership and the thing pops up with some fake agent telling me they're going to help me search and buy a car, and ultimately I get to a live person? I think all of us have experienced customer service chatbots. And so, and that is one type of chatbot. I mean, it really is. But when we're talking about generative AI, we're talking about chatbots that have the ability to take information and create completely new content. And that's what ChatGPT, Claude Perplexity, and others do. Okay, and then again, image generation. It can take an image and give you a description of what that image is and what's going on, and help you do image level analysis. I did a session for our regional aging conference not too long ago, and I put up an image of somebody's living room, and I said, "Grandma's coming to live with us soon. Here's an image. Analyze this. Tell me what we can do to make it more friendly for grandma to be able to live here." So it looked at the image. It gave me this whole list of things that I could do to make it more senior friendly. And then I asked it to develop a budget for me, and it did. It listed the materials in the budget I would need to then do it. So that's where we are today on some of these things. And so uh, we're not very far from ChatGPT. We're actually waiting on the desktop application now, but we're not far from it being able to read a second screen that you may have up with a report or some data or something else, and actually be able to do stuff in real time. Um, and so we're going to have voice and real time things in the not too distant future. All right, so some of the strengths, it understands English. You don't have to be a programmer. Matter of fact, uh, uh, the future of programming is probably going to be being an English major, because um, you need to be able to tell these chatbots, what do you want to do? Okay, go write me a program for that. Do your quality assurance testing, run a self check, blah 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 blah, and they can develop applications for you. Now, you would need to know some logic of programming, but you wouldn't have to sit here and worry about colon, bracket stuff. Um, you just need to know how to talk to it and tell it what you want. All right. So again, as we mentioned earlier, summarize a lot of information, generating content, and then giving accurate responses to user queries. Now, it does hallucinate and it does have some inaccuracies, but some of the influencers or the bloggers or the other people out here who are talking about, they're taking about a 15% chance of something happening and they're making it sound like it's 85% chance, and it's not. um it can hallucinate when you're asking it something it doesn't know, or you're basically forcing it to give you an answer. It'll give you one just like a human will. Oh yeah. We've all dealt with that with humans. Who tells you what you want to know just so they can get out of the room with you? I've done it. um and again, data analysis. All right, weaknesses. So yes, it can produce incorrect or nonsensical answers. That's why you have to have a subject matter expert reviewing what it's doing. It is sensitive to input phrasing. And so, if I'm cracking a joke and um like Brett was talking about, don't get too close, I'm not gonna get too close or whatever. And if I'd gotten up and said, well, yeah, don't get too close, I don't bite, but if I did, I had my rabies shot, then a human would laugh that off. But ChatGPT might start telling me I need to get a rabies shot and give me all this other stuff and totally misconstrue what it is you're telling. So, if you it's like dealing with a new employee or somebody learning a new thing. You have to assume that it's going to literally follow your instructions as you're giving it to it. And so this is where when people are saying it gives generic replies, that's because 90% are giving it a generic question. They're not working with the chatbot to give it a proper structure, context, and everything else. They're just expecting that it's like one of those Star Trek shows where they just say, "Computer, do this," and then it knows everything and always has the right answers. We're not there yet. We don't even have warp drive. um, and it does require large amounts of data for training. I mean, just like I said, you think about how much information the whole internet contains, and these people are going to burn through what's left in a year and a half. And so you hear about it taking jobs. Well, it's actually employing people too, because they're employing people to go work with these language models to see the answers that it's spitting out, and then they have a human going, "That's not right," and then they're working to plug in the right stuff. So uh, for a while, it's going to create some jobs as well as possibly remove some. Um, so yeah, challenges. It literally takes what you say seriously, and the other thing is consistency in long conversations. Okay, if I'm sitting down with any of you and you read a study or a report, we're here at a transportation conference, so y'all know how voluminous these CTPs can get, right? I was on the TCC for the Atlanta Regional Commission for a long time, and the volume of paperwork that I mean, I'm surprised the rainforest in South America is still there with all the reports they would generate. But you're reading this stuff and you're retaining it, and somebody can sit down and start asking you questions, and you can the big picture stuff. Yeah, okay. Um, you can answer that, and then the longer they're talking to you and the more they're drilling down, the more you're starting to you know think in your head. Yeah, I'm trying to remember that. Or, I really need to like pull out the CTP before I answer this. Um, or you know what? I'm just going to tell them what they want to hear. So I get out of here. I'm gonna hallucinate. And so that's how this works. You can't just open a chat thread, a chat conversation, and go on and on and on and on and on and just blow it up with information and then blow it up with questions, because it hits a limit as to what it can comprehend within that conversation. And as the conversation ends up going, we begin to discuss broader things than maybe we started out with. And so there's a couple of ways that you can compensate for that. One is to refresh the conversation. Um, you know, reload some of the information that you gave it originally so that it can kind of refresh its knowledge of what it is we're talking about. Or you can upload additional information that may help provide some focus. But if you just go on and on and on, eventually all of these things it'll forget, and then it'll start giving you answers that appear to be backtracking or just aren't helpful. And at that point, it's probably time to shut that chat down, and then take the reply that you were most happy with and upload a new chat, reload the documents that you want for it to examine, and continue your conversation. But a lot of the reasons that people are having problems with it is because people are going, "Hey, here's AI. It's wonderful. It's great. Start using it. Here's a few examples." And then nobody does any training. And without training, you're just going to get lackluster results. Okay, ethics, transparency, and fairness. How many organizations here have an AI policy right now, where your board has adopted it? Okay. Um, so yeah, particularly in the public sector, I mean, there's coalitions right now trying to come up with best practices on what an AI policy should be. And right now, I can tell you is nobody has the right answer. They have a framework, and as Brett was mentioning earlier, I feel like what we're going to see is they're going to overregulate. They're going to crack down too far, and um, hopefully, that could impact the quality of the products that we get. It could impact how we use AI, or whether or not we even use it. And um, the genie's out of the bottle. Employees are using it, and they're going to use it at home, and they're going to bring it to the office. And we kind of saw that in the survey here, and we're all doing it. Um, it later in the report, later in the presentation, I've got a slide from the National Association of Counties. Same thing. 40 some, almost 50% of the employees are using this stuff, and then they're going back to the office and they're using it at the same levels. And so that tells you a story. And again, you do have to have some safeguards and some other things to ensure that it's being used the right way. But if you had to get up and explain to your board, here's AI, here's how we're using it, you can't. Nobody's in a position to answer 1,000 questions. So, we can develop a framework for ethical AI use right now, but um, having a policy and training your workforce, and then having a tool that is able to, the tool can't follow your policy. Um, if you train your employee and then they upload the wrong document to AI, unless you're standing over them constantly, you're not going to know that. And so, again, these tools are great, but to me, we don't have the right platform right now. If you go past an AI use policy, we don't have the proper platform to actually enforce that, because we can't prohibit employees from uploading certain kinds of documents. There's no way to do it right now. So if you move forward with AI and you do develop a policy, you got to take a common sense approach to enforcement. Maybe there'll be a platform in the not too distant future that can uh, uh, solve some of those things for us. Okay, so the best practices right now is be transparent. We're using it. Here's the tools that we're using. You do try to be fair. Like I said, you've got um, people. If you're going to let people upload documents, there's going to be a chance that something's going to be in there that may not be. I mean, you're taking a calculated risk on it, and I want to be clear. If you upload a grant application to ChatGPT and tell it to analyze it, and you've got your information in there, um, if you have a business account with them, you can turn off the ability for it to use the information that you're uploading, um, and so that it can't take that and then put it in its master database of knowledge. All right. The problem is nobody trusts ChatGPT or the other companies to actually follow that. But legally, they have an agreement. If you have a business plan or enterprise plan, it is in their legalese that they won't use your data as long as you know to turn that thing off. If you don't, tough. So, but if you had something from your workforce or your aging program and you're uploading client information, then yeah, technically it could end up in their giant database, and somebody somewhere might ask a question where it uses that person as an example, and so that's kind of the risk there. In transportation, we all do procurement. We all do competitive procurements, or we're managing competitive procurements for folks. And so if you're running that through anything related to procurement and confidentiality and blah, 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 then, you run the same risk that I just gave in the social service example. All right, accountability. The best thing you can do right now is have a policy, train your people, and then you got to trust them until there's a tool developed that can filter information. And then you want to be inclusive. AI doesn't understand who's young, who's old, who's male, who's female, who's from different racial or ethnic groups. It doesn't understand any of that. And so you need to make sure you've got a person and a team that's looking at some of the collective output to ensure that it doesn't have bias. And the best way to do that is to make sure you have a diverse team looking at the information. All right, here's the NACo use summary. So frequency of use, let's see. Look at my there. Yeah, okay. All right, so this is at work and at home, and I didn't label which one was which, unfortunately. The one on the left is I'm pretty sure that's the one that's at home because it had more people, and you've got about 40% of um, people using ChatGPT, Bing. Now, the reason Bing's popping up here is because Bing is free and it runs off a ChatGPT 4 logic model. And so you can, I think they call it Microsoft Copilot now. But when they did this survey, it was still kind of called Bing. And then you got Grammarly AI, which quite frankly, I don't know why that's on there. Um, it technically uses AI to help you generate proper English. I know it corrects me quite frequently, but uh, and this is important from a regulatory standpoint, right? A lot of our states are publishing AI blueprints. South Carolina just did one the other week. Um, and so you've got states publishing blueprints and you got federal agencies publishing stuff. And before long, we're probably going to see state laws get published and all the whole public record stuff, right? And so when you think about it, if you're using a conversational chatbot, then your conversations are technically public record based on the public records laws. So um, you can produce that. You can produce the chat. Now, if you delete it, don't ask me how you get it back. You know, there's some things that the laws and just aren't. They're not equipped for the AI age. But I don't know how you would audit trail Grammarly AI. I mean, unless you're uploading documents to it. Google Bard, if anybody's using Google Bard, I mean, I really have to put a giant caution sign out there for you. Um, Google got caught off guard by all of the AI stuff, and they're basically last to the game, and they're playing catch up. And when you do stuff in a hurry, you make mistakes. So when Google's sitting there telling you to, make cookies with battery acid, or the best cybersecurity is to use passwords with your birthday and birth month and last name. And there was a great article on Tom's Hardware not too long ago. It was pretty embarrassing for Google. But you have to somebody in the organization, if you're using this organizational level, somebody's got to stay on top of this stuff because as everybody's competing with one another, and as they're doing it, they're rushing these models out the door, and then some of them can make critical mistakes or have some bad training and take you down a path that you don't want to go. All right, DALL-E, that's image generation. Neat, but not anything too critical. And then over here on the right side, you see the ChatGPT. So, I mean, the usage at home versus work matches up pretty well. I think the big thing is that at work, Grammarly was number 3, where Bing Chat was number 2. So, who knows? Maybe we'll call Matt Chase and ask him. I saw he reposted this the other day. All right, functionality. Obviously, you would know the IT people are going to be ahead of everybody else, right? But AI is not. You can't think about AI like a typical IT solution. This isn't an IT guy issue. It's not an IT guy problem or girl, whatever IT team. But um, it does have some additional capabilities that do help IT people out. But you see the other ones, HR and finance. That was really the second area that began to embrace this. So they were one of the early adopters. But you're beginning to see human services, public safety, economic development up on down, and even transportation's on the list here. So when you think about um, AI and what it can do, essentially, if you're proficient with it, you become 40% more productive in what you do every day with the information that you can process and create. 40%. Multiply that across the organization, with properly trained AI and uses, and it's you can definitely get things off the bottom of the pile. Okay, so we've talked a lot about AI, so now let's talk about how to use it. And so first thing we do is a prompt. And right now we're doing text prompts, but if you're on Mac, you can actually use voice prompts now. And we're not far from being able to do text, visual, or voice prompting. We're not far at all. But anyway, you have to interact with the AI in some way to give it some instructions, ask it a question, whatever. And it's called a prompt. So when you hear all this prompt engineering, don't that's just fancy word for you just need to know how to talk and interact with the chatbot or any other AI. As far as what I was talking about earlier, the more specific you are with your prompt, the better results that you're going to get. Garbage in, garbage out. You give it a trash question, you're going to get a trash reply. So and then they call it, when you're prompting it, you need to give it context. So we'll walk through something in a minute where I'm going to inject some knowledge to ChatGPT before I ask it a question. But if you want to ask it something about transportation or something transportation related specific to your area, then you need to give it some reference information to help it focus its answers. All right. So look, don't worry about spelling. You don't have to worry about misspelled words. I mean, I know when I get the little red squiggly line, I get real picky about it. But they don't care. If you spell cat with a C or cat with a K, it doesn't care. It will generally figure out what it is you're talking about. And then again, background stuff. So the main three ways that in prompt engineering, I mean, I just wrote a whole book on prompt engineering, and you can fill pages with prompt formats and different ways to do it. But generally, you've got three types. You've got zero prompt, what we'll call few shot prompt in a minute, and then chain of thought. And if you just do those three well, you're ahead of 80% of everybody else. So here in a little while, we'll look at the Rocky Mount Wilson Greenville Regional Transit Plan, and we'll go through an example of a zero shot, few shot, and a chain of thought. So few prompt is what you're trying to do with a few shot prompt is you have asked the AI a question, you've given it some context, and then you're asking some guiding questions so that you can come back and like ask a master question later and then get a better reply. And so here, the first thing I will ask it in a minute is summarize the plan and give us your findings. If it follows similar responses to that it's given me before, then I'm going to then be able to give it two more questions before I give it a third task. And the third task would be chain of prompt. Chain of thought. And you don't have to go in these steps. You can just give it some information and you can give it a well-structured chain of thought prompt up front. But everybody doesn't have to do that. A lot of times you just want to know a few things and you can use the other prompts. But in this case, what I'm trying to do here is chain of thought is really structured multi-step prompts. I'm giving you this. I want you to do task A, B, and C. And then once you've done that, then I want you to do something else. And now, when you look at the influencers on LinkedIn, or some of these other places, they love to give you these 10-page prompts, right? And those don't work. Um, they they just load up the AI with a bunch of complex instructions. There's too many things going on at the same time. Um, and they just don't really get you optimal results. Um, ask it a few things, then ask it to do something else, but don't try to put 5 chain of prompt structures together in one chat box. Because what will happen is all of the AIs, they can only give you so much text as a reply unless you instruct it otherwise. And what it does is the more you fill up that text box with the question, when it gives you the reply, it's like using its remaining available space. So no matter how complex that prompt is from Mr. Genius over here, you just limited your space that it can give you a reply. And so it's going to start consolidating what it would normally say. All right, demonstration here. So I'm going to be flipping in and out. Right, and I'm doing my Zoom record. I'm recording this for Zoom, so I need to change out my. I think I need to change out my screen share. All right, hopefully I did that right. I don't know. Zoom mastery eludes me.
Sure.
Ah, okay. All right. See, IT and AI doesn't mean what it used to. Just because I'm good at one thing doesn't mean I'm not horrible at something else. I do know what Otter AI is, though. Yep. All right. So here I've got some chat tabs loaded up here, and so what we're gonna do is um, I'll ask it an initial question. So I'm not. We're just gonna go cold turkey here. We're gonna say you're a transportation planner, 20 years of experience. Tell them what you know. All right, blah 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 blah. So it's giving you the rundown of probably what it's pulled off the internet. I mean, when you so what we just did is you can when you're working with ChatGPT, you can lead off with an instruction of act as a whatever you can think of, right? In this case, transportation planner, and it can assume it'll load up some base knowledge when you tell it that, and just by that act alone, it just became 50% smarter than if I just cold turkey thrown a document up there and said do this. But next thing we're going to do is these sets of documents here are transportation planner job descriptions and an RPO fact sheet. Am I connected to the internet? Technology. Oh, I didn't even think about that. I was busy fooling with Zoom. I was connected to it earlier up in my room, so all right, we're connected now. So all right, let's see. Let me X that out. So it didn't upload anything. We'll try it again. Unable to. Oh, okay. One of these documents it can't upload for some reason, but it looks like it got most of them. All right. So I'm telling it basically it's kind of like the Matrix uploading knowledge here. So I don't know if everybody's young and old enough to remember the Matrix or not, but giving away my age. All right, so now it's picking up some advanced knowledge and expertise. And so maybe it's thinking about things a little differently than it would have before I did this. So it's showing the advanced stuff. And again, this is what when it consumes all the knowledge on the internet, it probably knew these things. These exist, but it doesn't know automatically that this is the context from which I needed to think. Okay, so now I'm going to upload the my Rocky Mount Transit Development Plan. It's a pretty large document as far as plans go. It's a 10-county transit plan, follows all the same stuff, same process we see in a CTP. And what I want to tell you is, with ChatGPT, you can attach 10 files. You can upload 10 files, right? I'm trying to remember the file size limit. They used to be the file had to be 10 megs or less, but I think you can do it larger than that now. But you can upload you could take that CTP and you can load the whole thing with one file attachment or whatever. And you can upload, if you have a bunch of documents, you just upload 10. Oh, here, what you tell it is, I'm going to give you 20 documents and I'm about to upload the first 10. So let me know when you've read them and then I'll enter the next 10. And then it'll do something like this. And then it'll say, okay, I'm ready for the next 10 files. So again, it's how you deal with it. So what we're going to ask it is summarize So I'm just giving it a simple, give me some high level information. If you sat down in real life and read this thing, it'd take at least an hour. So when you think about when you're giving executive information to your director or your board or whoever else, what are you doing? You're giving them the high level stuff. Now, I didn't sit here and because of time limitations, I didn't sit here and try to get it to spit this out in a more usable way for me. I'm just trying to show you how fast this works. Now, I could sit here and tell it to give it to me. I don't want bullet points. Give me paragraphs, or there's different ways to interact with it, and it does like bullet points. You need to tell it if you don't want bullet points. If you don't want bullet points, you need to tell it you don't want bullet points. But I find that working with the bullet points, it gives you things that you can then hone in on, particularly if you're trying to examine a lot of information. And so, it just kind of gave me this rundown of the transit plan, and we can do other things with it. Now, one thing a lot of people don't know is that if I want to ask it a question, I don't necessarily have to go retype all this mess over again. I can say, I can highlight it, and then this little quote bar comes up, and I just press that, and then say, "Tell me more," like a psychologist. ChatGPT is on the couch. All right, so so now it's drilling down a little bit more, and telling me many things here. And so again, this is a multi-hundred page report, and we're just quickly dissecting it. I'll tell you, I took the federal FAR, 2 CFR 200, and a FEMA uh, um, procurement guide, and I created an entire federal compliance document in less than an hour. And I'm using it to train the public procurement folks in 3 weeks on it, because they don't know anything about ChatGPT. All right. Yeah, so I kind of I get to use Jedi mind tricks on them. Maybe it'll help some of y'all out later. Okay, so again, that is a zero prompt. I gave it some information. I just zero prompt, and I'm getting this kind of stuff. So when I go in and I give it, let me open my notepad here. That's where I was doing my copying and pasting. And so now I'm going to ask it a little bit of a few shot prompt. And since I've deviated a little bit here, so let's see, based on summary, summarize the recommendations of the plan. So I'm going to tell it to go in this order so that I actually get, kind of a plan A and a plan B. Sometimes, and again, going back to structure, if you give it ChatGPT 3 documents to give you information on, and this goes back to human in the loop, you might want that information aggregated and mixed together instead of report 1, report 2, report 3. And if you're not watching that, ChatGPT can give it to you like that. All right. So it's going back to reading the documents. I mean, it's definitely a speed reader here. So, it's going down and it's talking about the bus coverage. What are the key things about bus coverage that we need to keep in mind? And in the study, we're looking at, more service, expanded routes, more hours. And then we're kind of looking at the different things that we can do to enhance the connectivity. So again, I mean, I'm getting good information out of this report and not having to spend a whole lot of time going through it. To go through it and manually prepare it, you get an idea about how long this would take.
Robert, a question. So you said it's consuming data. So you could just type in based on 2020 census, give me the demographic breakdown of Greenville, South Carolina. You don't have to put that in because that data it can already go get.
Well, it depends on when it was trained. They might go, it knows everything up to today. And what I find out, so like census, they do estimates and they publish the estimates at different times. So let's do a Google Street View. Anyone, you're looking at Google Street View and you see when they drove by that commercial store, and maybe the guy was dancing out there with the cash for gold sign. And then the next time they did it and the guy's gone. Okay. Exactly the same kind of question, or same kind of example is I told it to run some census figures because I was preparing for a town retreat. So I told it to run census figures because I was looking at housing analysis. I was wanting to look at, how the housing market was broken down because housing is workforce housing is critical in our area. And then there were some, sub data components that I needed. And this human in the loop, I looked at the data that it spit out, and I was like, this doesn't sound right. Just based on my recollection of working with some of that town's figures in the past. And so I went, and there were probably about 6 different areas that I had to go in and manually, I had to look up the census current quick fact page and fix it and I don't exactly understand why it was in some cases it was overestimating, and then in other cases it was underestimating. So I would say that, when you have to be exact, you better get that human in the loop. Example.
Robert, can I ask you a quick question on your prompts here?
Yes.
So you did two summaries. So were you asking it to review the document and then you said, I'm kind of interested in these two areas. Can you give me information about this? Is that what you?
Yeah. I'm interested on, based on, I've given you the transit plan, and you've summarized information for me. And out of the summary, there's two areas that I'm interested in. So I want you to give me those answers, but do it in order. So we went 1 and then we went 2. All right, and this last one is an example of chain of thought, multiple step. I want you to do several things here. I want you to go through the plan, identify the key data points related to population growth, because in this case, it's pulling it right out of the report, so it should be factual. If you give it the context with numbers, it should pull exactly from the tables you're giving it. Pull out the key data points, and then what I want you to do is I want you to take that and turn it into a table from there. And then we're going to we'll do one other thing when it generates the table, and then we'll do the exercise. Do you have handouts for that, or do I need to print that for them? All right. So it's going through, it's creating my table for me. I'm looking at growth rates. And we have, in our area, in the combined area, we did have population declines. There's a lot of our part of North Carolina is extremely old and aging, and the housing isn't quite there to get a lot of the younger people to move in yet. All right, so it created my table here, and again, so I'm gonna, just for the sake of time, there's lots of different ways I could chop this up, but what I'm gonna do is now what you can do is I just highlighted some, just make me a chart. What you can do with data is you can highlight it and ask it which kind of charts would go best with this information. And then it'll give you a list of charts that you might want to use and why. And then you can pick the chart. But in this case, I'm just letting it do its thing. So here it goes, it's thinking. And whenever you see this circle here with the square in the middle, it's thinking. And it can take a minute. All right, so it's giving me a growth rate over time. And if I extend that out, I can look at a bigger example, and then I can download the screenshot and go put it in my reports on my board. Boom. Okay, live examples. Or breakout session, I'm sorry.
Got a laptop with you? Can play along. If anybody wants to use this NACo laptop, you're welcome to.
All right. It won't let me minimize that while I record. Right. Maybe because I don't have my screen share on. All right. Been working on it.
So what's the difference between the enterprise account for ChatGPT and or the business account versus just, I guess, the free, is there?
So there's a free plan, there's a free tier, but you only get 10 uses a day for the advanced stuff. There's a individual subscriber model that's $20 a month per person. Then there's what they call a teams plan, and a teams plan for a lot of us is probably what fits. And what that does is you're able to basically you set up a ChatGPT account, and then you convert it to a Teams plan, and then you're able to then create sub accounts for employees. And when you do that, you're bringing them in, you're creating their account and you're bringing them in under your Teams plan. And then you're able to set the whole thing as confidential, share chats with one another, use some of these other bots. Enterprise is basically for giant organizations. You're running things on a massive scale with lots of people, and you're going to be doing like advanced programming stuff with it.
From whatever putting stuff in for summaries and things like what you just did, does it learn from each?
Yes. So with a team, so with the individual plan, I can share my chat with other people, but they can't participate in it. They can just see. In a Teams plan, you can share your chat with other people within the organization and they can see it and contribute to it. But you have to do that on a chat by chat basis, which kind of makes it a little inconvenient, but it's better than that's why I was going back earlier and saying is they really don't have the right platform for us yet. The best platform we've got is Teams, where we can bring people in and share chats and collaborate. And if I want to bring 5 people in that's on the Teams plan into a single chat and work together, we can. But again, every single new chat you open, you got to reshare with all the same people. So you're having to do it on a chat by chat basis. Yes, you can toggle it so that it doesn't retain sensitive or confidential information. What the language is it says it's a little slide bar and it says, do you allow ChatGPT to use your information for its knowledge base? You can share it within your team account, yes. And by default, they're not supposed to use your team's data for their larger knowledge base, but you also have a slider in your account where you can tell it again, don't use my information.
So state of Oklahoma has contracted or working in Google to provide free training. It's like 10 hours worth of training. Is that something that you would recommend?
I think any chance that you get to train on the chat bots is good. Take it. You just have to understand kind of what the risks of using Google Bar are.
If you're not going to use it, I mean, it's broad enough that it could benefit. We use ChatGPT now.
Yes.
But Oklahoma's now taking they're paying for all state agencies like this states.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be beneficial.